everyone, and welcome to the Search Bar, your virtual happy hour hosted by the Franklin Institute. My name is Adam Piazza, the Adult Program Specialist at the museum, and I'll be your moderator and bartender this evening. At the Search Bar, we get to know a little more about our scientists through conversation and questions submitted by you. We'll be chatting over one of our scientists' favorite drinks, which we will make for you live on screen for them to enjoy. And we encourage everyone at home to partake in a beverage themselves. So unwind and learn a little with us. Let us know what you are drinking and share your questions for our scientists in the comment section. Today, our scientist is Chief Astronomer at the Franklin Institute, Derrick Pitts. Derrick Pitts, are you there?
I am, Adam. Hi, how are you?
Hi, Derrick. Lovely to see you.
Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. I enjoy all patrons at my bar, and I'm super excited to have a drink with you here at the Search Bar. It's a lovely day. It's a great day for a drink. So before we get started, do you mind just giving everyone out there like the brief introduction of who you are? Go ahead.
Well, thank you, Adam. Well, as you heard Adam say, I'm Derrick Pitts. I'm the Chief Astronomer and Planetarium Programs Director at the Franklin Institute Science Museum, and I take care of all things astronomical at the Franklin Institute, the observatory, the planetarium, astronomy programming, all sorts of stuff like that that has to do with astronomy or space exploration. That would be me at the Franklin Institute. Sometimes when people ask me and they say, so what's your title at the Franklin Institute, Derrick? I jokingly say, Lord and Master of the Universe.
I definitely agree with that. It's very interesting because like when I tell people that I work with you, they're like, you know Derrick Pitts? And I'm like, yeah. Like, do you see him often? I'm like, yeah, he'll come to my desk asking for like glue and adhesive. And they're like, what? I'm like, yeah, he's like just a great employee and guy. Like I get it, you're a star, but they sometimes forget that like, I just see you run back and forth to the observatory all the time or asking for something. Like,
just a regular guy doing a regular job at a great place in Philly.
Exactly. And we are so happy that you are part of that team. And I'm very happy to know you. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, and I'm happy to know you too, because if there's any time I need adhesives, I know exactly the person to go to, Adam.
Yep. If you try to get into a sticky situation, just let me know. I'm there to help. So Derrick, we are here at the Search Bar, which means to get the rest of the conversation rolling, we're going to need to make a drink. And Derrick, what drink would you like?
Well, my favorite drink, actually, and this is something of late, just like the last couple of years, I really enjoy a very dry Bombay Sapphire Gin Martini with 3 olives.
Derrick, that's fantastic because I have all of those ingredients here to make that drink for you.
Wow.
Right? And also what's great is I'm going to get to enjoy the drink with you. So let's make this drink live. Now, what's really great is that over the last few episodes, we've had Jayatri, we've had Rachel Valletta. Everyone so far loves gin, which is great because I love gin as well. Okay. But something that's unique for your martini, because you want to be a dry martini, which typically would refer toward mainly the vermouth, but the gin we're using, as you mentioned, Bombay Sapphire, is a dry gin. And what that means is that there are no other added flavors or sweeteners. What happens is just like vodka, it starts with grain alcohol, it gets distilled, and then it gets distilled again with those botanicals. So there's no added sweeteners, there's no other flavors added past that second distilling. So we're gonna add some of our gin. And we're gonna add 4 ounces, so we'll each get 2, roughly, or more. And then the next ingredient we're going to need to add is our vermouth. Now, vermouth is a wine product, and whether you like white or red, it always starts off with white wine. And one of my favorite things about reading about vermouth is that it sounds like snake oil because they advertise that it's fortified and aromatized, which just sounds like, an I Love Lucy episode, so I'm here for it. Almost like a vitamin to vitamin moment. But what it means by fortified, right? You got added alcohol or to raise that ABV, so usually by adding some type of brandy. Right. And then it's aromatized by adding other herbs and spices.
Yeah.
So a dry vermouth versus a sweet vermouth has less sugar. And it's a little bit less spicy and tends to be a little bit more toward the citrusy side.
Right.
So we're going to add some of that.
And I think that's why I really like it, Adam. Why I like the martini with the vermouth, the dry vermouth, because when I drink these, it reminds me of a tropical situation because it is so citrusy. So I really like that flavor.
And then the other thing that makes a dry vermouth dry, right? Or a dry martini extra dry is one, using dry vermouth. So this is extra dry, but also the amount of vermouth.
There you go.
So the less vermouth you add, technically the drier it is. So if you want like the driest of a dry martini, you've got dry gin, dry vermouth, and not even a lot of that vermouth. Now, of course, another signature thing of knowing you're drinking a martini is the glassware. And the glassware is very unique because it has a very special design for a couple reasons. One, you like, and most people like our martini served straight up, right? So we're not going to add any ice into the glass, but we still want to chill it. But if I'm holding a drink like this, my body heat's going to warm it up. It's going to bring it down a little bit quicker. But that long stem allows me not making contact with the beverage itself. And that large opening, especially for something that's fragrant, really lets you smell it as you bring it in. So that's what's great about our glassware. But we still need to chill this. So I'm going to grab some ice.
And that's a very important part because I always like my martinis chilled as cold as they can be.
And you also like it stirred, right? Not shaken.
I like it stirred, not shaken.
Now, anyone out there who makes drinks has preferences, right? But when it comes to why we do certain things over another, when you shake a drink, you're doing it to mix different ingredients, to agitate it, and that same thing goes for stirring. But shaking also aerates it. It adds bubbles, it adds more texture, and can sometimes shatter the ice. So shaking also only makes the most sense when you've got some like fresh juices, lemon, some dairy. So you've got all of those pieces in there. So stirring is a bit more preferred when it's just alcohol inside. So
and the other piece of it was, you know, many people remember the martini as being the drink of James Bond, the famous spy that we saw in the James Bond movies from the 1960s and 70s. And he always ordered his martinis shaken, not stirred. Now, the difference here, as you were pointing out, has to do with the ice, because when you shake it, what happens is you get little flecks of ice in it, and that might tend to cloud it a little bit. But the other thing it does is it also puts more water in the drink. And so, that's why I prefer third.
Yep. So when you have the ice, right, you're going to add dilution as well. And so for a lot of drinks, you kind of want a 20 or 10 to 20% dilution for a drink. Now, we can shake it, but instead we're going to stir it, right? Of course.
Yes, yes.
Oh, you're saying no to the dilution. Sometimes you really want to enjoy a drink there. So what we're going to do is, I've heard that a good method of stirring this drink is about 30 to 45 seconds. And there's a song out there that works out really well for this moment, Derrick. So would you like to sing Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star with me while we stir this drink?
Of course, let's do it.
All right, so I'm going to count down from 3, and when I get to 1, right after 1, we'll start singing pretty slowly, all right?
Okay.
So 3, 2, 1.
Twinkle,
twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. Up above
the world so
high, like
a diamond in the sky. Twinkle, twinkle, little star,
Stars, how I
wonder
wonder
what
what
you
you
are.
are. There, that was fantastic. I'm understanding there has also been a little bit of a tech delay for some people, so they're probably going to listen to that and be like, they were off key so horribly. But it doesn't matter. We're having fun, and we're drinking some delicious martinis. So
It was lost in the technical translation, Adam, so we were perfectly on pitch the whole time.
Oh yeah, we were. No, we were fine. It's technology that's flawed us.
Exactly, exactly.
All right, so let me. There we go. This one had a little bit more room. There we go.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
That's good. All right, and you want some olives? Let me grab you.
Yes, please. 3 olives.
Our olives right
Excellent.
there.
Very good.
Excellent. All right, I'm ready to pass it off. You ready, Derek, for your drink?
I'm all ready.
All right, here you go. I hope you enjoy.
Oh, wow. Thank you so
Excellent.
much, Adam. Well, that looks great.
Let me get my olives. And there we go.
There we are.
Do you eat an olive first? What's the order you eat your olives for a martini?
First, I take a sip of the martini.
Okay.
I have to make sure it's right.
Okay.
And then after I take a sip of the martini, I'll take an olive. And then I'll try to make the olives last as long as the drink.
Okay, so we'll use olives as our pacing throughout it. So if you take an olive, I'll take an olive as well. But let's toast.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you.
All right. Ooh. That's real good.
That is good. And you know what?
Oh no.
It's very dry. Perfect. It's just perfect. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. And can I also be honest with you? I think this is, if not my first, then the second martini I have ever drank.
Wow.
Yeah. I have a reaction where I do not like allergic. I don't care for olives that much. So anytime I saw like a martini with olives, I'm like, ugh. So one of my favorite alternatives has been Tattoo Moms. They serve a pickletini. So they use like a little bit of pickle juice as a substitution. Delicious.
That sounds good. Sure, that's almost like a version of a martini called a dirty martini.
Or a dirty martini, right? And if some people, so also by definition, if it's a martini, it's got gin, right? If you just say I want a martini, it's gin. If you say a vodka martini, vodka substitutes the gin. If you want a Vesper martini, then you've got vodka and gin in there. And if you want to use cocktail onions instead of an olive, then you've got a Gibson.
Yes.
Or not a Gibson, I think it's a gimlet. Let me double check which one that one is.
It's a Gibson, I think.
It is a Gibson. Yeah, you put the onions in, it's a Gibson. Gimlet's different. That's lemon juice and like a gin and tonic.
Yeah, a whole bunch of other stuff, right? Unnecessary things.
Exactly. Today we're focusing on this. All right, so we have our drink, and we're going to start chatting. And you, as part of our, thanks for reminding me to sip that. As part of our Franklin at Home initiatives, you've been doing a lot of like our observatory, like kind of night skies at home type pieces. But what are some of those topics in general that you love about astronomy and that the public just goes crazy for? What are some of those like topics that people really cling to?
You know, I can always start a conversation about something in the sky, Adam, if I start out with one of two things. Either it's black holes or it's aliens. Either one of those will always start a conversation without any problem at all.
Does anyone try to combine it? Is someone like, tell me about aliens and black holes? Have anyone tried to do that method yet?
Sure, tell me about the aliens that come from black holes. Tell me about the black holes where aliens live. It's crazy. It's crazy. People love to talk about those two particular items. And you know, I can really understand why. Black holes are enigmatic. They don't make any sense, yet they exist. We know they exist. And they're a significant portion of the operation of the universe. This universe couldn't exist without them. The other one, aliens, I think that one really appeals to us because we all wonder about the possibility of life somewhere else out there in the universe. And there have been so many science fiction movies and television programs that include aliens, everything from what you could imagine as being a really unusual alien to something being just completely ridiculously identifiable
Yeah.
as a person zipped into a rubber suit with 2 arms and 2 legs and 2 dangly things overhead.
Yep, I've seen that at music festivals. That's everyone's main attire is latex
Exactly.
alien suits. It's a rage. So when it comes to like those aliens, like, and you look through, pop fiction and science fiction, what is like your favorite outrageous depiction of an alien? Like you saw this moment in a movie and you're like, that's just, I never would have thought about that as an alien.
Most unusual that I've seen depicted. Now you mean like not like obviously not really an alien?
Yeah, like they try to depict it as like this is an alien visiting Earth, and they show this creature, and you're like, that is not how I expected, an alien to ever look. Like, what's that most outrageous one?
Okay, so my 2 favorite ones,
Yes.
there's one that's really a classic called The Blob.
Oh, okay.
Now, The Blob was a movie that was made in the late 1950s. And let me see if I remember correctly. I have to remember if The Blob was a creature from outer space or if it was that other genre of unusual creature, something that developed from the rampant use of radiation back in the 1940s and 1950s. That's always another one that comes into the picture. But there's The Blob. I really like that one. And let me see. The other one I think I've seen is a really odd looking thing that was sort of blobby in shape, but it had really weird projections coming out of its head. And it also had a very oddly shaped body that, how could you imagine that this would be an alien, except for 2 things that were very distinct.
Okay.
This creature had what's known as, it had something called bilateral symmetry. And that is, if you were to take this creature and sort of fold it in the middle, just fold it right down the middle of itself, well, what was on this side was duplicated over on this side. So even though they were oddly misshapen and sort of distorted, it still had 2 eyes. It still had a nose-like thing. It still had 2 things out here that, we interpret as ears. Had a couple of arms and it had a couple of legs. And it was so obvious that what had happened was, while wardrobe was being developed to shoot this movie, they unfortunately ran out of money and decided that they simply had to get some sacks of fabric from someplace, stuff it full of some other things, and sew some weird things on the outside, and try to call that alien.
Okay.
Totally crazy.
So it definitely feels like a person got like lost in a potato sack race. Like they're just
Exactly.
like in this sack, sort of amorphous, but still like symmetry. All right. So if you want to win your way to Derrick Pitts' heart for aliens, blob form, some like symmetry to them, and like just a couple little appendages. That's how they win your heart for like alien illustrations.
Yeah, for really, really silly alien illustrations. And the thing that's really interesting about this is that, if you think about it, Adam, if you think about the possibilities of what could possibly happen out in the universe, there is absolutely no reason why an alien has to appear in any sort of a shape or form that we might even recognize as alien at all. So you could dream up anything out of your imagination, anything, and you could call that a possibility for what an alien might look like. So for example, the only reason why we're shaped the way we are is because this particular shape and form we have works really well in the environmental niche in which we find ourselves on this planet. So all of these things that we have help us to function successfully as an organism in this environment. But
Yeah.
if my environment were really wildly different, I might not need the arms and the ears and the mouth and, all that sort of
Yeah.
stuff.
I really like, so that just makes me like think about like anyone who's drawn an alien or like depictions, like how much research they must go to be like, in this movie, we're going to say this alien is from like Venus. So if someone were to say an alien, dwelled near Venus, what would be some of their characteristics then? What do you think? Be like, well, because of this environmental structure, they wouldn't have. What do you think? Like Venus, go.
Well, I think first of all, it would have to have some kind of very, very thick skin to be able to resist two things: the very high temperature on Venus, right? Because the temperature on Venus is nearly 900 degrees Fahrenheit, right? So there would be that. It would also have to be flexible in a way because it needs to be able to withstand the incredibly high atmospheric pressure, right? It's really, really very, very high atmospheric pressure, enough that the atmospheric pressure on Venus has been known to deform spacecraft that have landed on Venus in the past. So that's important. And then the other thing is it would have to have some kind of very, very large and sensitive visual sensors because the planet is entirely surrounded in clouds. So I would imagine down on the surface, it's very murky.
Okay.
And last but not least, the exterior would have to be acid resistant because there's an acid rain that falls when it does rain on Venus. And so that very, very caustic atmosphere would have to be resisted somehow.
I like painted the picture in my head, and I think we just landed on like the next best like quarantine game is like Derrick describing a planet and just like Pictionary, everyone's drawing what they think this alien looks like, and then they show it, and it's like a mix between Pictionary and those like caricatures you get on the beach. Like someone illustrating, like, and they're on a skateboard. Like I feel like that's you described an alien, and here they are as a tennis player. That's really cool. Think about how these aliens in sci-fi like depicted, and like if they did their research, knowing how those environments dictated. And I think that's really kind of ties in well to discussing like how humans, like what that connection is to the night sky. Like we can describe the idea of what space looks like, but what is like that human connection to the night sky that you really enjoy?
Well, before we get there, we're going to have to do an olive. So we have to,
olive, perfect.
Have to do an olive here. Okay, so now it's time for an olive.
Good call.
So the olives are a little salty, but the salty taste goes really well with the flavor of the martini. I never liked martinis when I was younger, actually. I only started drinking martinis really recently, like in the last 4 or 5 years. And I remember that when I was a college student, friends of mine drank these all the time. I should be careful about that. Every once in a while, they would enjoy it. But they had a special name for martinis. And I didn't understand what that term was. And the term for martinis that they had they called them silver bullets.
Okay.
And I thought, wow, that's really interesting. Why did they call them silver bullets? Well, to be honest, once I started drinking them, I discovered why they're called silver bullets. And that is because here's a drink that's almost completely clear, right? So in a glass like this, it looks sort of silvery, right?
Yeah.
But bullets because they are very effective in terms of the alcohol level.
Yep.
So that's why they call them silver bullets.
So because of their really like efficient, like being just alcohol. And okay.
Their potency. So they're smooth and potent.
So what's interesting is when I was doing my research, I came across a quote, and I wrote down this quote, and it was that unlike an aperitif, which is soft and bitter and prepares your body for a meal, a martini is a cocktail. It is a social anesthetic. And I was just like, yep, pretty much. It's like the drink you do to let you know you're done with the work day. You're like, no, I'm not going to be able to handle anything else after this. So good calling it social anesthetic.
There's no more work coming after this. Yes, you're absolutely right. Yes, that's true. But you're right. They really are a social drink. They are a social cocktail. And in that pure sense of that term of a cocktail, that's what this is. This is one of those classic American cocktails that's been around for quite some time that has become iconic in our culture for various reasons. And of course, they've come and gone in their popularity over time. But still, I think it's making a comeback, and I think they're really rather good. This one that you made is really fabulous. Thank you very much.
I'm also enjoying this drink, so I'm not being biased on it. I'm also really enjoying it.
Okay, so now you were asking about the connection to the night sky.
Yes.
So the connection to the night sky sort of goes like this. You know, we as humans, as organisms on this planet, have been walking around on the surface here for a little over 1 million years. And in that little over 1 million years that we've been walking around, part of the time we've spent looking up at the night sky, wondering about those bright objects we saw up there. What are those lights we've seen up there? And the universe has always called us in a sense of allowing us to ask a question about the universe and about sort of like this idea of who are we and where are we and how are we connected to all those lights out there? And so our curiosity about the night sky is something that keeps us asking that question, and those questions particularly related to our exploration of the universe. Because when you get right down to it, Adam, here we are on this planet, and we know that there are plenty of humans on this planet, but it makes us wonder about the possibility of life somewhere else. And it's not so much the question of what is that life like? Is it dangerous? Is it benign? Is it going to be harmful to us? Any of those things, any of those tropes that we see in the science fiction movies about how aliens have to be? No, it's more about the universe allowing us to define who we are based on what we know about what's out there and whether or not there are any other living creatures like us, because that helps us understand better who we are. And I think we as humans always want to have a better idea of who we are and what we're doing here.
I think that's I think that's a really great way of looking at it. Like, I'm a person who like not say a social butterfly. Like, I love gatherings, I love experiences. And I feel like the idea of knowing and thinking about like what would that alien experience be like, you know, if they were someone or anything to like engage with, what would that be like? Would they like a martini?
If they were considered intelligent life, of course they'd like martinis.
Exactly, they would love a martini, right? They'd love this silver bullet. They'd be like, this place, Earth, is a great place to stay. I think we've got some intelligent life form here. We're going to keep chatting here. And you bring up another good point about questions. It's kind of just like a little segue to remind everyone out there watching that if you have any questions for Derrick, just send them through in the comments. We have our barback, Katie. She's our social media manager. She's sending me some questions. And one question we do have for you, Derrick, does Linda have a drink?
So she likes a slightly different version of the martini, and it's a martini made with another another French type of vermouth called Lillet.
Okay.
And let me see if I can remember. There's a very special name for that. I'm trying to remember what the name of that is. Oh, it's going to take me a moment to dredge it up. But instead of using vermouth, she likes it made with the Lillet.
Okay.
And so that's a really nice drink also.
Is it like slightly more floral? Like, what is like the taste like?
It's slightly more lemony.
Okay,
It's a little more lemony than the dry martini with vermouth is.
gotcha.
Yeah.
Nice. Now, next question is, you mentioned earlier that you also help run the planetarium, right? You are coordinator or like manager of the space. You have other people on the team that help with shows.
Yep.
What is it like to run and work in a planetarium and like its connection to other experiences like the movies? Like, what is that connection that you have there and thoughts on it?
Well, it's a really interesting experience working in a planetarium because you have the opportunity to command time and space. You can move forward in time, you can move backward in time, you can see what the sky has looked like over that time period. And that's always been a lot of fun because people are always curious to find out what the sky looked like on a particular date. For example, like when were you born? When's your birthday, Adam?
My birthday is actually really soon. It is May 15th.
Wow, coming up next week, at the end of this week. Well,
Yep.
Happy birthday. A
Well,
little
thank
bit
you very
early.
much.
Yeah, right. Well, you might come to the planetarium and ask, what did the sky look like on the day I was born? And so we could dial the machine back in time to the year and the day you were born and show you what the sky looked like on your birthday. This is another way in which people connect with the night sky, is they have that wonder about what the universe was like on the day they were born. Well, we can do things like that. And, in the earlier days of the planetarium, when we had, I don't know if you ever saw it, Adam, but, the planetarium used to have this giant ant machine in the middle of the room. Yeah,
I
remember that?
it.
Okay. So that was the electro-optical planetarium projector that projected stars and planets on the dome. And we used a whole set of other projectors to create all the scenes that we used. And so we had, let me see if I can remember the number, something like 350 other projectors that we used to project all of the scenery and the special effects. And so we would create different environments using these different projectors that had, images in them, slide projectors with images that we could use to create these different scenes on different planets and things like that.
Yeah.
Very cool. But it was always bound to the planet's surface, whether it was Earth or Mars or, Proxima Centauri or anything like that. It was always bound to the planet's surface. But nowadays, planetarium equipment is much more advanced than it was back then. And now, in a sense, we are like a gigantic CGI theater in which we can now project any kind of computer graphics that can be generated. We can project that onto the hemispherical dome above our heads. And that way, we can simulate any kind of environment we want to at very high resolution. So now what we can do is we can go anywhere. We can lift up off the surface of the planet. We can fly out into the universe. We can go all the way to the edge of the universe, turn around and look back to where we came from, and then come back to this portion of the universe. We can go inside buildings. We can go inside the human body. We can go inside a star. We can go inside nebulae. We can do all these kinds of really cool things that we never could do before. So it's really very exciting to take people on sort of like explorations of the universe using the projection equipment we have in the planetarium now. It's a lot of fun. The difference between this and a film experience is that, a film experience is set as the film. The film is what it is. It's shot, it's recorded, it's played back, and that's what you see. The same every time. In a planetarium, we can customize every experience we provide to meet something for any of our visitors or go in any different direction we might decide to go in as part of that program.
So as you've been describing this, it's made me think that over a couple of years, when I watch some sci-fi shows or series that kind of take their one point that sometimes gets used for humor, but now I believe it, is when they're like, we created a simulation within a simulation. And, you know, for that first tier to like trick people that they're watching something, but the whole thing is a simulation.
Yes.
And I've seen you do planetarium shows, and now I'm just going to think that like in a couple years, I'm going to enter the planetarium, and it's going to be a simulation of a simulation that you've conducted, where you've made me feel like I'm in a planetarium watching space about a planet. Like it's, and so now I'm going to be tricked. I'm not going to trust myself every time I walk in there.
Yeah,
Like,
you have to be careful because we can also shift dimensions, and we can take you 3 dimensions or 4 dimensions in. So you'll be in a planetarium of a planetarium, watching the universe, and not know which universe or which planetarium you're in.
My drink just got a lot stronger with that. Silver bullet to the brain with that one, Derek. That was
There you go. Sure. Time for another sip, by the way. Thank you.
Yeah, let's cheers.
Tasty.
Still very delicious. Now, if you could go to any planet, what planet would you like to go to?
Oh, so you know the obvious planet in the solar system for me.
Is...
You know, I'll bet many people would imagine that I'd love to go to Jupiter or love to go to Saturn. You know, Jupiter looks so cool.
Yeah.
With the clouds, with all the dynamics and the curly cues and festoons, as they're called, and all the, you know, the great planets, all that stuff, right? Or maybe Saturn, because it has those gorgeous rings, and that would be fun to kind of fly around the rings.
Both seem to be places that kind of have like a go with the flow attitude. You know, like it's very like ethereal. So I'm getting that vibe from those 2 planets. But go on. What other planets?
Well, the truth for me is that I'd like to go to the one where I can really put my feet right on the ground, and that's Mars. I'd love to go to Mars. You know, now Mars at first doesn't sound as interesting as Jupiter or Saturn, perhaps. You know, I can get that. But
fewer syllables.
What's that?
Fewer syllables. That's probably why. It's
that's
like
true.
Mars.
That's true. Fewer syllables.
Yeah.
That's true. But you know what? There's an advantage to Mars. Like I said, you can actually put your feet on the ground on Mars. You can't do that on Jupiter or Saturn. And if you were to try to do that, you know, it wouldn't be a very good outcome for you, because as you go inside the planet, the pressure increases and the temperature goes up. So you'd get squished into like a bag of protoplasm and then burned to a cinder. Whereas on Mars...
Already sounding better. Continue.
Already feeling better, right? On Mars, you can at least walk around on the surface of Mars and explore a place that looks very much like Earth looks like, except all the oceans are missing. On Mars, that is. But it would be kind of fun to look around on Mars and explore all the canyons and all the valleys, and, you know, look around for evidence of past life on Mars. There's a really good chance that there might have been something living on Mars in the past, maybe even something still living on Mars underground. We aren't sure. We haven't found anything, but there's a possibility. So it would be fun to go explore Mars for those reasons.
Nice. And how could you ever see yourself like living on Mars, or do you think that like a, you know, creature comforts thing of home, it would only be like a, you know, like right now we've all been home for, you know, almost 2 months with self-isolation. And so of course the brain wanders. I'm just like, yeah, I guess if I were visiting somewhere, it would have to be like short term. Like, could you see yourself living on Mars? Could you see that?
Adam, I want to live on Mars in one of those gigantic glass dome cities.
Oh.
Right? You know, it has its own atmosphere inside. It has parks, it has streams, it has little lakes, it has all of the amenities that you would find in a major future metropolitan city under glass. Yet you would still have the opportunity to jump in a spacecraft, blast off, go visit Earth, go visit the moon, go out and visit Jupiter and Saturn, and then come back for a nice, relaxing Bombay Sapphire Gin Martini in the 1/3 gravity environment of Mars.
That sounds fantastic. That sounds like a dream, like vacation. I also, in my mind, because you mentioned glass dome, I have a very 60s aesthetic to what this future town looks like.
Yeah.
So, you know, everyone's got like high silver collars.
Exactly. You got the slick silver suit with the epaulets and everything, like little rings that go around your arms and stuff. Yeah.
Yep. Exactly. We discovered that like Barbarella is actually just an autobiographical depiction of life in Mars in the future. I'm okay with it. I'm all right.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's what it should look like, right?
Yeah. I think that's how we should design the future, so that it feels like it's the 60s. So that we can just use that information as like canon within our history. Like, I'm okay with it.
Exactly.
Totally.
Right. Yeah.
So now you've been at the museum for about how long have you been working at the museum, Franklin Institute?
I've been at the Franklin Institute for over the years. Yeah.
That's right.
So 43. This is my 43rd year at Franklin Institute.
Well, cheers to 43 years of the museum, and
Indeed.
Cheers to many more.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, you know, before working at the museum, what were some other things you did? Like, what led you to working at the museum? What led you there? Or what are other jobs you had at the museum?
Oh, man. You know what I often say about working at the Franklin Institute is I've done everything except be president of the Franklin Institute. Don't tell Larry. He doesn't know that. Right? Okay. Anyway, let's see. What have I done besides work at the Franklin Institute? Well, I worked in a bookstore for a while. I worked in a paint store for a while. I worked in a business office for a while. And I worked in a drugstore when I was very young. Believe it or not, I had my first job when I was 12 years old. I worked in a drugstore for 5 years, from age 12 to age 17. Wow. So I had a lot of experience in retail, shall we say, before I went off to college. And then once I got into college, I found other ways to entertain myself in terms of work. And the Franklin Institute came up as a lark because I was really looking for a summer job while in college. And the Franklin Institute was hiring people for summer employment. And so I got on working as a science interpreter for the Franklin Institute, and had a summer job for 2 years before I was offered a full-time job. And so right out of college, I was offered a full-time job at Franklin Institute. And you know, it's a weird thing because nowadays, nobody stays at a job for more than 6 or 7 years at a time, right?
Yep.
Well, this job has been amazing because about every 5 years, I've been offered a new and different challenge to take on. And so it has been a fantastic ride because every 5 years or so, I've gotten to do something different, more challenging, more involved, with an incredible latitude for creativity and connection with the public that comes to visit us. And for that reason, it's been like I have a new job every 5 years or so. So, you know, I get to work with wonderful people. We get to do cutting edge programming. It's been fantastic. And the sort of supplementary experiences I've had working at the Franklin Institute are nothing short of amazing. Absolutely 100% amazing. I don't think I could have gotten that stuff any other way. So it's been fabulous.
Hearing this story, like I've known you worked there for a while, and we've been co-workers for a while, but hearing this story, it's very similar to how like my trajectory was. So like I've been at the museum now for like working a little over 15 years. All right. So that's how I've been working there. But I started off volunteering during the summer, during high school. And I volunteered, to get me and myself out of the house. I did that for the summer, did like discovery camp, did some things on the floor, then volunteered for 2 years. And my boss was like, do you want to work? Like, do you want to get paid for this now? And I'm just like, yeah. So I had to go get my working papers because I wasn't of the legal age yet technically to work.
Wow. You started really early.
Yep. So I had to get working papers.
Mhm.
And then ever since then, I've also had that evolution of jobs from, working as a floor educator to a camp counselor to a science interpreter, like you mentioned. And then now to like planning events and stuff like after hours other programs. And I agree, you always get these challenges. It feels like a new job every time. There's new creativity that finds its way in there. Like it's a fascinating place where like you have a lot of like options and it just keeps like growing, which is great. And we've worked together on quite a few of those programs, right? So
Yeah.
we've got Night Skies, and Night Skies, like the program at the museum, has been around for how long roughly?
Oh, Night Skies has been around for, let me see, 12 years, 13 years? Yeah, something like that now. Started out as a very small program, just an evening
Yeah.
observatory program. Then we added on planetarium stuff, and it's grown tremendously.
And then with that, this year we brought back jazz in the planetarium.
Yes, indeed we did.
It wasn't until we started discussing it that like I learned that long history of what we've done in the past. And the stories you told of like you were on a cruise ship with a jazz band while talking about space. I'm like, that just sounds like the best. I don't know how long that trip was, but that just sounds like the best time.
Yeah. Don't tell anybody. We sort of did it under the radar.
I think it's fine. I think we're fine there.
Of course, we're fine.
Yeah.
But
and then with that as
but you're right.
well,
That kind of diversity. No, go ahead.
No, you continue.
I was just going to say that kind of diversity of opportunities to create content. You know, Adam, it ranges everywhere from just having some little pieces of equipment that you carry around in your lab coat pocket that you can take out and share with people on the museum floor to doing things like creating travel adventures to enjoy jazz music while, connecting with astronomy clubs in other parts of the world to observe the night sky. It's everywhere across that spectrum of things that we have this great opportunity to create, to engage people in science.
It's fantastic. And one question that actually came up a little while ago, and I know I hear this question a lot, so I'm good to have you, help answer it to the public. What are your thoughts on laser light shows in the planetarium, and do you ever see them returning?
Ooh. Oh man. Woo! Laser light shows. Oh my gosh. What a phenomenon laser light shows were back in the 80s. They were phenomenal. So we do laser light shows in the planetarium Friday, Saturday, and Sunday nights. And Friday and Saturday nights were crazy. They were just crazy. We could do, I forget how many shows a night, 3 shows a night. They were always sold out. 330 tickets sold for each and every show. And the last show was a midnight show. I think we started the shows at 7 o'clock in the evening, and the last show was a Pink Floyd midnight show. You talk about odd creatures coming out of the woodwork late at night. You've never seen what we've seen in the planetarium that late at night. It's miraculous that everything survived intact.
So
didn't happen that way always, but
yeah.
But yes, so they were really a phenomenon. They were a great attendance machine for us in terms of bringing people to the planetarium for a different reason other than astronomy programming, a totally different audience. That was great. It was really wonderful. And they had a cycle, Adam. They were great for 5 years, and then they weren't so hot for 5 years. Great again for 5 years. So it kind of went like that. And a big change happened when the planetarium technology switched from being the analog projection system of the electromechanical machine with slide projectors and special effects that we built in the shop, and it turned into CGI.
Okay.
People tried to create laser shows in CGI. And I have to tell you, it didn't work out as well. It wasn't as exciting as the regular lasers, shooting across the room. Those early shows were much better. Now, is it something that we might ever do again? I know that there are planetariums that still do laser shows, but they don't do them full time, like every weekend through the year. They do them
Yeah.
seasonally, like, you know, a couple of weekends in the spring, a couple of weekends in the fall, and they're very successful. And I could certainly see that happening at the Franklin Institute again for that kind of limited kind of presentation. I think it'd be great to have laser shows back again like that.
And I think you brought up a good point about that CGI part, because like the real thing is always better. And while you were talking about that, I kind of go back to like one of my favorite movies, like Jurassic Park, which lives up to it because they built like a giant T-Rex. Like you can watch that and it feels so real and terrifying now.
Yeah.
But CGI, you know, at one point was peak. And if you watch CGI from just a few years ago, you're like, that looks so fake. The same idea goes for laser light shows. I remember once there was a show in Franklin Theater that had like lasers projected on the movie. It was trying to tell like a story. I don't remember the story as a Tang appearing on the screen. That was my only memory of that.
Yeah.
And then the planetarium for a couple years we had Sonic Vision. I think I watched Sonic Vision way more times than is a healthy amount, but I saw Sonic Vision a lot. But it still added to that like collective experience, right? Of being in the museum and that whole atmosphere that's going on there. So I'm trying to think, with there, what are other, we've talked about the idea of like a simulation, you know, how that kind of fits with the idea of describing the planetarium. What other programming or things do you like dream of being able to do, whether the technology exists now or it's being developed? What would be like your dream way of like teaching people about space, the planetarium? What would that look like?
Well, what that would look like is it would look like a platform in which we had full motion control of the floor of the room, so that it was much more like a flight simulator.
Okay.
And the reason why I say that is because the imaging that we can do in the planetarium can be so good nowadays that if we had the motion to go with it, we really could transform the experience from being just a, you know, sort of mediated, go in, sit down, look at the dome kind of thing, to a really active thing in which we could make people feel as if they were in a spacecraft. And here's what I really like about how the planetarium is set up. You know, the dome overhead, when you go in the room and nothing's on, nothing's projecting on the dome, it just looks like sort of a cream colored ceiling. But as soon as you put imagery on it, if we put the right imagery on it, we can make it look like the glass dome bubble on top of the Star Trek Enterprise spacecraft, you know, so that it would look like we were sitting in a glass bubble as we fly around through space. And so it would be really cool to have the motion control platform so that we could really emphasize that feeling of flying around through the universe. And that way, what I'd love to do is take people on walking tours of Mars, for example. Take people out to galaxies and walk them through the nebulae and the star clusters and have us fly around black holes at the cores of galaxies. I'd love to take people into the core of a star and let them see what the interior of a star is really like, or the interior of any of those cool things. I mean, without a doubt, the best thing of all to do would be to ride up right to the edge of a black hole, peer over the edge, and sort of start the journey into the black hole, really with the feeling of what it would be like for the whole room to sort of go. That would be great fun.
Yes, I want that experience so bad. Like, and I think what's great is that just like we mentioned trends, you know, like laser light shows were big in the 80s, and then it kind of took like a downfall. There was that kind of period where places are doing like that 4D theater experience, right? Your chair rumbled, you had some air blasted in you.
Yeah, right.
And it was great for that period, and then it, you know, that novelty wore off. But I feel like just like people wanting laser light shows, we're gonna get to a point where people are gonna be like, I want you to put me on like a strapped on treadmill in a room that's moving with a dome over my head. People are going to want it. and I'm here for it. It can't be that much to
But
do.
suppose Adam,
Yeah.
suppose I could take you to lots of other places. Suppose I could take you down to the bottom of the Pacific Ocean, and we could sort of scan along the bottom of the Pacific Ocean and go and sort of like ride along with giant squid or something like that. Or suppose instead we could go out and run with dinosaurs. And suppose we could actually start inside the Earth and come up through the Earth's crust, out through a volcano. Suppose we could do all of that kind of stuff as an experience of something you could do. And suppose we could go inside the human body and sort of work our way around from one part of the body to another part of the body and up through the brain and come out through the eyes and cool things like that and see what the interior structures were like. I would think that kind of thing might be fun. Not to mention the fact that I would love to invite artists
Yes.
to join us in creating all sorts of travel possibilities of places we've never even imagined possible to visit or explore.
I can see it already. It's like Derrick's magic carpet ride in the planetarium, where it's like, I can show you the world, and I'm here for it. I'm ready to go for this ride. So one thing before we go is that our bar back has reminded me, and time has gone very fast. It is almost 6:30.
Wow.
And we're not quite sure if we might get kicked off with like the meeting ending. But here's the best part. Derrick, I think this means that you should come back to the search bar another time to continue this conversation. Does that sound like a fair plan to have you back one day soon?
I would love to come back, and I have another drink that I can give you as well.
All right, let's not tell everyone yet what it is.
No. We'll hold on to that.
But wait, Derrick, before we sign off, how's your drink going? You still have 2 olives? What's going on here?
Oh, yeah. Let's do another olive here. Hold on.
Okay.
And now you top that off with a sip.
Okay. That is delicious. I now add Martini to the list of my favorite drinks, which, along with everything else I've learned here, is like so much to learn from you, Derrick, which is fascinating.
You did a great job with this, Adam. Thanks so much.
Thank you. So, Derrick and everyone out there, I want to thank you again for joining us. Again, we are about to end this just in case it comes to an abrupt end anyway because of technology. But I want to thank you all for joining us here at the Search Bar. And Derrick, everyone can tune into you on Thursday nights, right?
Yes, Thursday nights, 7:45 at the Franklin Institute's Facebook page. Night Skies at Home. Join us there with whatever questions you might have about astronomy or space exploration. And this week, we'll talk about astronomy clubs in the Delaware Valley, and we'll talk to an astronomer, a research astronomer at the University of Pennsylvania, who has all kinds of great projects going on in places all over the world.
Fantastic. And then until our next drink, I'm gonna mull over that dome with the moving ground. That's a simulation in a simulation. I'm gonna mull this over. I'm gonna pitch it to you. We're gonna get it to work. But Derrick, I want to thank you again very much for joining us, and everyone out there. Make sure you tune in next time for our next Search Bar. And Derrick, I look forward to inviting you back. So
thanks a lot for having me, Adam. We'll see you again next time at the Search Bar.
See you again. Thank you very much, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your night and your week. Thank you very
Bye,
much.
everybody.
Now we wait, Derrick, right, to see if it ends. We're just going to keep sipping this on screen. It's like a blooper reel. People are watching.
That last olive.
I'm so excited.